Hello, my name is Dimitri Alexeyevich, and today is January 17th, 2026 AD. It's 8 a.m. Kiev time, and we're beginning our unusual recording with my fellow Odessa resident, Mikhail Sergeyevich, who expressed a desire to address the head of the Kingdom of Denmark and other heads of state, to the crowned heads, and offer his proposal on how they can protect the Danish monarch's rightful possession of Greenland from the illegal attempt to annex it by the United States under the leadership of President Trump. Mikhail Sergeyevich, I give you the floor.
Hello, today is the 17th day of January, 2026, AD. 8 a.m. Kiev time. My name is Mikhail Sergeyevich. I am a resident of Ukraine, a free man, a servant of God. I live in the city of Odessa between Marsalskaya Street and Mercury Center. I decided to take this opportunity to record my address to free men, servants of God, crowned heads, monarchs, and heads of European states' powers regarding the situation in Greenland. I hope Dimitri Alexeyevich will publish my appeal on his resources and perhaps comment on it. I would like to begin an appeal to the sovereign crowned heads and the Supreme Pontiff of the Universal Church. I am writing to assist you in protecting the territorial integrity of the states of the European Union and the Danish royal family in particular. As you all know, the island of Greenland, the legal property of the Danish kingdom, is currently under threat of illegal annexation by the United States of America, which had the audacity to infringe on the sovereignty of the Danish kingdom. This violates all international norms and norms of customary law, as well as international treaties on the inseparability of the borders. The actions of the United States of America, in this regard, can be qualified as primitive so-called bullying. That is, the intimidation of a weaker animal by a stronger animal, without taking into account the fact that in this case we are not talking about animals, or even about individual Homo sapiens but about sovereign states headed by sovereign heads of states. The attempt to intimidate, albeit a small but still sovereign kingdom of Denmark by the United States solely from a position of strength without regard for international treaties, the legal norms of the United Nations, and the norms of customary law, is a profound humiliation of both the sovereign kingdom of Denmark and its sovereign head personally, such as its sovereign partners in the European Union and in the North Atlantic Alliance. It seems to me that the very possibility is so humiliating for the kingdom. This demand of the U.S. president transferring Greenland to U.S. sovereignty or forcing its alleged sale stems solely from the recently emerged practice of condoning an attack by one sovereign power on another sovereign power, without a formal declaration of war, and condoning large-scale military operations on the sovereign territory of another state, without the warring parties being formally in a state of war. Of course, I mean the full-scale armed invasion by Russian Federation troops of the sovereign territory of Ukraine, recognized as sovereign by the Russian Federation, without a declaration of war in February 2022, and the prolonged conduct by the Russian Federation of military operations on the sovereign territory of Ukraine, without being formally in a state of war. This was accomplished with the astonishing connivance of both member states of the European Union and the entire international community as a whole. Strangely enough, no state in the world has decided to accuse the Russian Federation of flagrantly violating the Third Hague Convention and attacking a sovereign state, primarily without declaring war, as strange as it may sound, despite the fact that the Russian Federation has occupied significant territories of the sovereign Ukrainian state and is even attempting to formally annex them, declaring them sovereign possession of the Russian Federation. The Ukrainian state and the Russian Federation are still not in a state of war with each other. Therefore, they are at peace with each other. Moreover, despite the formal state of peace between the sovereign Russian Federation and the sovereign Ukrainian state, the United States of America is pressuring the president of Ukraine to sign a so-called peace agreement with the Russian Federation and to cede to the Russian Federation the illegally seized sovereign Ukrainian territories. European powers, however, are well aware that the Russian Federation has seized and is occupying sovereign Ukrainian territories illegally while formally staying with Ukraine not in a state of war but in a state of peace. Nevertheless, they do not dare to declare this openly. Just as before in February 2022 they were ready to accuse the Russian Federation of so-called aggression, but were unable to accuse it of the most important thing: violating the Third Hague Convention and attacking sovereign Ukraine without declaring war. Thus, the European powers not only condone the Russian Federation which is waging military action against Ukraine without declaring war, and thus, with illegally occupying sovereign Ukrainian territories, the European powers are also condoning the completely illegal pressure by the United States on the President of Ukraine with the aim of forcing sovereign Ukraine to cede to the Russian Federation the illegally occupied territories, which it seized without declaring war and which it is trying to nominate contrary to all norms of customary law. Such a cowardice, and I would even put it more bluntly, such lackeyish connivance on the part of the European powers there is, that together with the violation of the Third Hague Convention by the Russian Federation, there is the illegal pressure by the United States on the President of Ukraine to coerce Ukraine into signing a so-called peace treaty, in conditions under which Ukraine and the Russian Federation are already formally at peace, and not at all at war. Ultimately, it plays a cruel joke against the European powers themselves because it created a dangerous international precedent, namely, the ability to seize by force and annex other countries' sovereign territories without declaring war, contrary to all norms of customary law, but simply by the right of the strong. It is precisely thanks to your, dear sirs, lackeyish connivance mentioned above lead to today the United States of America feels entitled to seize by force and annex the sovereign possession of the Kingdom of Denmark, the island of Greenland. A precedent was set. You yourselves agreed that the Russian Federation allegedly has the right to occupy the lands of sovereign Ukraine without declaring war. The United States allegedly has the right now to demand that sovereign Ukraine cede its sovereign territories illegally occupied by Russian troops, allegedly under a peace treaty, despite the absence of a state of war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. Now Europe faced the same thing as it created with its connivance in the violation of the Third Hague Convention by the Russian Federation. Namely, today the United States of America also believes that it allegedly has the right to annex the island of Greenland, which belongs to the Kingdom of Denmark, without declaring war on the Kingdom of Denmark. A precedent was set, and you yourselves, respected gentlemen, created it back in February 2022, when you, instead of accusing the Russian Federation as of attacking sovereign Ukraine without declaring war, you preferred to accuse the Russian Federation of so-called aggression. Nevertheless, I do not think that the still formally sovereign states of Europe, especially those headed by sovereign crowned monarchs and in particular the sovereign Kingdom of Denmark, are ready to accept such humiliation as the United States of America is about to inflict on them by forcing the Kingdom of Denmark to sell Greenland, or even going further and bribing the population of Greenland to sway them to illegal separatism with the goal of subsequently annexing Greenland. In this regard, I would like to propose a very simple solution that is obvious. Yes, the United States of America are very strong. Yes, they possess superior military power. Yes, they have arrogated to themselves the right to print paper dollars since the early 1980s, not backed by gold even formally, but nevertheless for some reason serving as a mean of international settlement instead of the sovereign's gold as is right. And therefore they can buy anything and anyone by simply printing the necessary amount of green paper. Yes, Europe is currently seriously weakened, including the fact that the United States and Great Britain through joint well-thought-out actions have pitted all of Europe against the Russian Federation on one hand, and by depriving European countries of cheap Russian energy resources, on the other hand by forcing Europe to pay for the senseless massacre in Ukraine, which isn't even a declared war. But nevertheless the United States has one weak spot, namely the crime of September 11, 2001, also known as 9/11. As all of you being high-ranking government leaders are well aware of, the three buildings of the World Trade Center in New York, that is the Twin Towers and Building 7, were not destroyed by burning kerosene and by two aluminum planes of so-called Arab terrorists that crashed completely into the remaining buildings, but with the underground thermonuclear explosions of high power which earned the official name of Ground Zero, that is the epicenter of a nuclear explosion to the World Trade Center demolition site. So why don't you simply threaten the United States and their leadership that if the United States continues to pressure the sovereign kingdom of Denmark with the aim of forcing it to humiliatingly sell the island of Greenland, or if the United States dare to seize the island of Greenland by force? As a retaliatory measure, the injured party will publicly expose all the undisclosed aspects of the crime of September 11th, and in particular how the U.S. government as a cowardly villain fully aware of what it was doing sent to work at the place called Ground Zero several tens of thousands of naive American volunteers without adequate personal protective equipment, as a result of which tens of thousands of these same volunteers who inhaled radioactive vapor later died in terrible agony from leukemia and other various forms of cancer. I am sincerely convinced that such a tough approach by European leaders is capable of once and for all cool down the aggressive fervor of the leadership of the United States of America. It will force the United States to return to respecting the sovereignty of European states which in a fit of chauvinistic frenzy they were ready to subject to such humiliation as the seizure and appropriation of Greenland. This is the essence of my appeal. I address it to the following royals and other heads of state and to His Majesty King Frederick X of Denmark, to His Holiness the Vicar of Christ Pope Leo XIV, to His Majesty the King of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland Charles III, to His Majesty King Philip of Belgium, to His Majesty King Carl XVI of Sweden, to His Majesty King Philip VI of Spain, to His Serene Highness Prince Albert II of Monaco, to His Majesty King William Alexander of the Netherlands, as well as to the following heads of state and government. To the President of France Mr. Emmanuel Macron, to the President of Finland Mr. Alexander Stull, to the President of the Swiss Confederation Mr. Guy Parmelin, to the Prime Minister of Italy Mrs. Giorgio Meloni, to the Federal Chancellor of Germany Mr. Friedrich Merz, to the Federal Chancellor of Austria Mr. Christian Stocker, to the Prime Minister of Denmark Mrs. Mette Frederiksen, to the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom Great Britain and Northern Ireland Mr. Keir Starmer, to the Prime Minister of Belgium Mr. Bart de Wever, to the Prime Minister of Sweden Mr. Ulf Kristersson, to the Prime Minister of Spain Mr. Pedro Sanchez Perez Castellano, to the Prime Minister of the Netherlands Mr. Dick Schaaf. I sincerely hope that my address to all the aforementioned gentlemen reaching their ears will help them make the right decision worthy of the greatness of the peoples and states they lead. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you, Mikhail Sergeyevich, for your speech. I listened very carefully. I think everything you said was spot on. I actually have nothing to add. In fact, it would be unethical to do so, because this is, after all, your speech, not mine. I'm simply offering you the opportunity to speak on my channel. Well, I think everyone understood everything. And I hope that Mikhail Sergeyevich's speech will reach the right ears. These right ears will draw the right conclusions and thus protect themselves, as Mikhail Sergeyevich suggests. Thank you all for your attention. Goodbye and all the best.